Good morning, people. TMOT back. Another drive time. House cleaning. If you can like it, you can share it. Take it past where you found it. Always seek first to understand, then to be understood. Before I start, can somebody just tell me if they can hear me without any noise? Because the last video I did, people were saying roll the window up, and the window wasn't down. So please tell me if you can hear me before I get started. Just type it, because now I can pay attention and look at the screen. Okay, we're good. So let's get on with this. I'm going to be reading some things, but there are things that I typed up on my Facebook page. Some of you, not you, because you guys are here, you know I put a lot of posts out on Facebook, but I'm going to upload this to YouTube later. And there are a lot of people out there in YouTube that are not aware that I do many videos now and many posts on Facebook, and I have not been doing as many videos, but that's going to change here in the near future. So you see the title, Trump Racist Exposed. Well, we're going to examine that. The purpose of me doing this video is twofold. I want to give some tools to true conservatives, whether they're in the Republican Party or not, on how to fight attacks that they may encounter against those who want to call you racist simply because you don't agree with them. If you say you think that the BLM is a terrorist group, they want to label you a racist. And so if you're in the Republican Party, you're a bootlicker, an Uncle Tom, you're a racist. So I'm going to give you the history of how this actually went down. And the second part of why I'm doing this, if there are any Negroes or Hispanics that want to understand the true history of racism in this country, pay attention, because everything that I'm going to tell you, you can verify it. It is undeniable, and it is documented in many cases on government letterhead. All you have to do is go and look for it. It's as simple as that. So let us get started. Some notable notes. About half of whites vote Democrat. The other half vote Republican. I have said many times that the key voting blocks are that of minorities. They make the difference, especially in large races or national races. Not much so on congressional races because of the way they draw the lines. For instance, the 4th District and the 5th District here in Georgia, one in Atlanta, one in DeKalb County. The line is drawn so that the majority of the population that votes is black. Therefore, there will always be a Democrat in DeKalb County, and most likely black, and a Democrat in Fulton County, the 5th District, John Lewis, Hank Johnson. Hank Sullivan is a good friend of mine. Hank Johnson in the 4th District of DeKalb County. I have been asked many times, why don't you go and run against Hank Johnson? And I'm not going to win. I'm not going to lie about where I stand. I am a true conservative. I am a constitutional conservative. And the things that the Democrat Party supports, I'm not going to lie to the constituents just to get them to vote for me, act as a Trojan horse. I don't get down like that. I want you to know who I am, and I want you to understand what you're getting. So I have turned those offers down repeatedly. The last chairman for the Georgia GOP offered me money to drop out of the Senate race and go run against Hank Johnson. Why? Because I was making those on the platform in the debates look stupid. Because many of them were running on, I'm going to repeal and replace Obamacare. What's happening right now? Republicans aren't doing what they're supposed to do when it comes to repealing Obamacare. And I always call for simply the repeal of Obamacare. They were running on repeal and replace, but they have even failed on that. Why? Because they are rhinos. So let's talk about this history of racism in this country. All right. Oh, so I just told you about half of the whites voting for Democrat, half voting for Republican, and the votes that are manipulated, blacks and Hispanics, are used to determine a race. We did something different in 2017. That's why Donald Trump won. There were blacks and Hispanics that have traditionally voted for Democrats. They decided to do something different, and they voted for Donald Trump, Make America Great Again, because they were the smarter of blacks, that is, who understood that Democrats ain't done jack crap for them in 50 years. And that is a fact. Okay, here we go. First, I want to talk about all of these whites and blacks who will come to you with the Southern strategy. Basically, the Southern strategy is racists left the Democratic Party and joined the Republican Party. Now, there is no record of every person in Congress or both houses leaving the party that they were in, going over to the other party, and that is Republicans going over to the Democratic Party and Democrats going over to the Republican Party. That's what switching parties means. That didn't happen, but that's what people will tell you. The Republicans and the Democrats switched parties. That is bunkers, that is crap, that is, forgive me y'all, I know it's Sunday, that is straight up bullshit. Now, what makes you think a racist would leave the Democratic Party, the party that fought to overturn the 13th Amendment, verifiable, undeniable, documented on government letterhead, the Democratic Party that fought against the Voting Rights Act, that fought against the Civil Rights Act, that fought against the 14th and 15th Amendment? I asked the question, why would we have needed them anyway if we had simply followed the spirit of the preamble to our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence? More importantly, where it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. If we had just followed the spirit of that, we wouldn't have needed the 13th, 14th, and 15th, or the Emancipation Proclamation, or the Civil Rights Act, or the Voting Rights Act. But why did we need them? Democrats is why we need them. And I'm going to break this down for you so that you will understand it. So getting back to the Southern strategy, there was no switching of parties. A racist would not leave the party that has fought against all of the things that the Republican Party gave us. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. None. So that's what you tell them when they bring that to you. Ask them to show you government documentation where every Republican that held a seat in that party left it and went over to the Democratic Party and vice versa. They can't show you that because it does not exist. And again, it is the Democrat Party that fought against the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Now, many people will say, well, it was Johnson, the Democrat, who signed it. Johnson signed it because Kennedy had planned to sign it, and there were more Democrats voting for it, and more Republicans voting for it, and the Democrats just realized, hey, you know what? Because of all the crap that's going on, we just need to go on and get on board. And so Johnson signed the bill. But it wasn't because he wanted to. Johnson is the one who said, I'll have niggas voting Democratic for the next 2 years. Johnson is also the one who is recorded calling black folks niggas when they were discussing literacy tests. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute. All right, let me go down my list. So that was the Southern strategy. Now, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, many don't know that they met. And Malcolm X, and I'm talking post-Mecca Malcolm X, because Malcolm X views changed when he returned. He wasn't the racist that he was before he went on the pilgrimage to Mecca. Malcolm X even exposed the honorable, as they put it, Elijah Muhammad for the liar and cheat and all the other damnable deeds that he was doing to screw over the Nation of Islam. And they didn't like that. Suffice it to say, Malcolm X, and let me get the quote. Malcolm X said that when Democrats, blacks, that is, give 80% of their vote to a party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party fails to deliver on their promises, you are a chump. More importantly, you are a political chump. These words are verifiable, undeniable, and documented. Malcolm X, 2 days later, was killed. Now, here is a man who was about to expose the Democratic Party for what it was. Yes, he was. And then you got Martin Luther King on the other side preaching racial solidarity, saying, hey, when he was attacked by a white racist, they asked him if he wanted to press charges. He said, no, I don't want to press charges. I'm more interested in a system, the democratic system, that would create such a person with that mindset. That's what Martin Luther King said. So imagine if Martin Luther King and Malcolm X had joined forces, one exposing the Democratic Party and one reaching out in love to people of all colors and creeds, saying we are all the same, we are all God's children. Let us join hands and sing together. The Democratic Party, the system, didn't want that. Their greatest tool is division. And the greatest among those tools is racial division. So they did not want that. They were not going to allow that. And they used two Negro patsies to kill Malcolm X. And they used a racist patsy to kill Martin Luther King. The government was behind it, whether you want to accept it or not, because the two of those guys getting together was a frightening prospect to the government. What did I just say? What did Malcolm X just say? 80% of blacks were giving their votes to the Democratic Party. Malcolm X was about to change that. So therefore, in large races, guess what? The Democrats would not have been able to win those races because that voting block of Negroes would have shifted and changed the tide. You see, they changed what they teach in school, making you think that, here's the beauty, the democratic process, the Democrat Party, they are not the same. But what you're taught in school is the Democrats were responsible for all of the things that took place in this country as it relates to blacks. Yes, they are responsible for a lot of things, and I'm going to break that down in a minute, but certainly not racial equality, not the Emancipation Proclamation, not the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, and certainly not the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act. So Malcolm X was killed. Let's talk about some of these Democrats that many of you laud over. FDR. Under the New Deal, his plan was the basis for welfare, later used by LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, to break up the Negro family, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Under FDR, our federal government, under the guise of free health care to Negroes in Alabama, allow them, now many have postulated that they were actually infected with syphilis. This program started under FDR in 1932, ran his entire 3 terms, 12 years without him doing anything to stop it. And these men went untreated from 32 to 72 with syphilis. It wasn't until it was exposed that they started paying reparations. And what they said to mitigate the losses was, well, we just didn't treat them. They didn't admit that they infected some of them because they wanted to see the natural progression of the disease, and they used Negroes to do it. This was a Democrat that allowed this program to start. Now, here's some insult to injury. Another Democrat. In 97, Bill Clinton apologized to the last 8 surviving members of this travesty, okay, perpetrated by our government. And let me read his words, because I don't want to misquote him. You know what? I didn't copy down his words. I didn't copy him down. All right, no problem. You can look it up. You can Google it for yourself. Bill Clinton is the same guy who in 94 gave us the 94 crime bill. Yes, Bill Clinton ran on, I am going to be tough on crime. But you know what ended up happening? Negroes unfairly started being warehoused in prisons across this country due to unfair treatment of how drug-related crimes were treated. Crack versus cocaine. If you want an understanding, go look it up. I'm not going to get into all the details, but Bill Clinton was responsible for that. And while he was promoting this bill, Hillary Clinton said these young people, speaking of Negro gangbangers, need to be brought to heel. And I don't mean H-E-A-L, I'm talking H-E-E-L, what you do to a dog. That's what Hillary Clinton said. But Negroes forget about that, and they continue to think that the Democrats are in love with them when they certainly are not, and their actions prove that. Let me get down to LBJ. So that's what FDR did for you. He allowed those Negroes in Alabama to go under this program where they were allowed to suffer with syphilis. Now we get to LBJ. LBJ used welfare to break up the black family. He had a policy that he put in place called no man in the house rule. Google it. Look it up. It is verifiable. It is undeniable. It is documented on government letterhead. So basically, if you were receiving welfare, no man could be living in the household with you. Now, while there may have been whites on welfare or more whites, this adversely affected the black community even more so, because if there were jobs available, guess who were going to get the jobs first? White people, not black people. So unemployment in the black community was high. Hell, it's always been high. And that ain't nothing new. That has always been the issue. And it's compounded when you have kids that don't give a damn about school because their parents don't give a damn about school. And all of this was brought about because of the welfare system. Before the no man in the house rule took effect, black men not in the household was around 7%. After it was fully put in place and implemented, the results of it in 2014, 73% of black households have no father, let alone male adult, raising the children in the household. It is a fact. It is verifiable. It is undeniable. And it is documented on government letterhead. Look it up for yourself. That LBJ, that was a Democrat for you. I just talked about Bill Clinton. I talked about FDR. Let us move on. The 14th Amendment. Another situation that Democrats have given us in order to increase their voting bloc, because some blacks are starting to wake up. So what do? Let's bastardize the 14th Amendment to create more voters for the Democratic Party. They will look at us as their hero, much like the Negro looks at the Democrat Party as their hero. The 14th Amendment was intended to benefit blacks who were being denied certain rights guaranteed to every other American. And so with this 14th Amendment bastardization, they now said, even if you're an illegal alien and your child is born here on our soil, they will now be a citizen of this country. That was not the intent of the author of the 14th Amendment. Look it up. It is verifiable, it is documented, it is certainly undeniable what the author stated the intent of the 14th Amendment was all about. It was for black babies. It had not a damn thing to do with granting citizenship to those who come into this country illegal and drop a baby on our soil. That is what that is. Moving on down here. Look at the many cities run by Negroes. Baltimore, Chicago, Flint. They are run down, crazy violence, and blacks are in charge, and they are Democrats. I remember once a preacher saying, how many Republican slums have you ever seen? You don't see many. Now, don't bring up the trailer park, because by and by, there ain't nothing like the violence, or they have nothing like the violence that you see in some of the ghettos across this country that are inhabited by Negroes. That is a fact. It is verifiable, undeniable, okay? All you got to do is look it up and do a little research. DeKalb County, my own county, we have 3 high-profile individuals that have been sent to prison for corruption. Democrats. We got a sheriff who killed the incoming sheriff because of his corruption. Democrat. We also have the CEO of the school board, Emmanuel Lewis, Democrat, sent to prison for racketeering. And then we had Burrell Ellis, who was later vindicated, but he was sent to prison for corruption as well. Now, I don't know the details of the vindication or what it involved, but he spent some time in prison. That's what goes on in cities run by Negroes. Look it up. It is verifiable, it is undeniable, and it is documented on government letterhead. Hell, John Lewis's 5th district here in Atlanta ranks in the top 10% of the most corrupt, the most violent in the country. That's John Lewis, who's been up there for more than 20 years. Keeps getting reelected, ain't doing a damn thing for the Negroes in his district, or the Negroes that he is supposed to serve, but instead, who lord over him as this great civil rights leader who ain't really done crap, ain't done jack, legislatively speaking. The list goes on and on. So, I was saying to you earlier about we hold these truths to be self-evident, and I talked about explain why we would have needed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. I said because of Democrats, which brings me to this. Trump, they are trying to expose Trump as a racist, but Trump is no racist. Trump was never called a racist until he ran for president. Nobody talks about the fact that Trump has given thousands of dollars to the likes of Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, that this man has surrounded himself with blacks that have wanted to stay in his hotels, that have wanted to gamble in his casinos, that have wanted to dine in his restaurants. For the last 30, 40 years. Nobody talks about that then, but now all of a sudden the man is a racist. Why? Because Trump, like Jesus, is upsetting the apple cart of the establishment politicians, and that includes both Democrats and Republicans. And while I have focused on Negroes and they're being enamored with the Democratic Party, let me say something to you, Republicans. Many of you are just as dumb, just as stupid, and are as much of a political chump as those Negroes. You want to know why? The likes of John McCain, Woodall here in Georgia, Johnny Isaacson here in Georgia. We got Collins here in Georgia. You got Lindsey Graham. I think I said John McCain. You got Mitch McConnell. You keep re-electing those useless Republicans over and over and over again, and you think that you're going to get something different. Every last one of them ran on repeal and replace Obamacare, and they ain't done jack. The only person who's been pushing hard for it that you hear about was Donald Trump and Rand Paul. I ain't heard none of the others pushing for it like he was. The only thing I've heard him doing is making excuses. But those guys continue to reign in Washington, D.C. because you Republicans keep electing them. You had an opportunity to send somebody like me, a constitutionalist and a true conservative, to Washington, D.C. Instead, you chose Johnny Isaacson, a man who ain't doing nothing to move Trump's agenda forward, a man who did nothing to correct many of the ills that our veterans face here in this country. So don't look at me like I'm crazy. Don't look at me sideways. Do your job. Stop re-electing those people and Negroes wake up and understand who the real racists are and the people that have actually had their foot on the back of your necks for the last 50 years. And I'm not even talking post-Reconstruction, because if you got half a brain, you can look up and see that the Democratic Party wasn't the party that had the president that gave us the Emancipation Proclamation, or the party that gave us the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, or the ones who voted overwhelmingly to pass the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Those were Republicans. So if you don't have a clue about the real racists after this video, God help you. No, more importantly, God help us all, because you know what? You knuckleheads are voting, and because you outnumber the real conservatives in this country, you're the ones responsible for sending this country down the crapper. And that is what that is. You can keep thinking Trump is the racist if you want to. You're simply just being a fool. I grew up in the 60s. I'm damn near 60. So I understand. My mother and father were teachers and understand the realities of what I'm talking about, because they saw it for themselves. I saw it. And when I see a young person walking around thinking that Democrats love them, all I can say to myself is, you young, stupid fool. You have no idea where you're headed to or what you're wishing for. Lord, all I can do is pray that they wake up. And these damn racists and these statues, they are the least of this country's problems. The least. Let the racists have their Confederate flag. Let them have their antebellum statues. Let them have all of that nonsense, and let them remain silent and out of the damn way, and let us focus on unifying and bringing the people that are in Washington, D.C. to heal. You hear what I said? Let us bring them to heal. Let us fire them, and let us send true conservatives, people who actually believe in the Constitution, to Washington, D.C., and let's get rid of some of these damn socialists. T-Mot out. Drive time. Till next time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you can like it, you can share it, pass it on, teach somebody, help somebody to grow. Remember, always seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I get so people commenting out of ignorance on my wall. When I say seek first to understand, then to be understood, I'm basically saying you just made an ignorant ass comment and you have no clue of what you're talking about. Peace.